And for everyone on YouTube, welcome. Just going to be going over a strategy that's built through my own bands here. They're called the cheat code bands because they've been working extremely well recently, so thought it was a fun name to have for them. Essentially, the strategy is I've got all these bands right here, and it might be best if I change the bottom color. I know those tend to not come through as well, so let me switch those real quick. Should be a little better. Essentially, the strategy is once we're in a strong momentum, we should hit the top green band up here that I have. And once we get to that, we're kind of looking for the next best pullback to enter. So I have it marking off with an X right now, but once we tap that top band there, we're going to wait until the price comes down to these kind of green pastel colored bands here. And once we get a confirmed bounce off of it, that's kind of our next best signal to enter. So for example, this would have been our, I want to not see the price too far ahead of time here, just so I can keep it as honest as possible. But essentially this would be our first signal, like, hey, look at this chart. There might be a good entry soon. And then as we're scrolling sideways, we're looking for them to reject off these bands. This is a really nice candle. It's got pretty good volume relative to all these candles that are before it. It's kind of a hammer doji type candle here. So once this one closed, definitely would have been looking for an entry on this next candle here. So you could take a long right here. And what I would be looking for is kind of an entry right at that start, and then a stop loss below these green pastel bands. So stop loss looks something like this. And then first target is really just back up at the top green bands here. So you can see the risk to reward in this is actually not too great. Probably still take an entry and see if you can scalp something small out of it. But yeah, you can see the reward, risk to reward is pretty bad if you scroll sideways. It's about 0.68. Of course, the bands are going to ride upwards as you're going. So that green target's going to move a little bit up, and the risk is going to keep decreasing every candle that passes through, since they're already heading upwards here. So you can see that we actually do hit target right in here. So quick little scalp here on the 17-minute chart. Just keeping track. It looks like we got our signal at about 10 o'clock, our entry around 3:10ish, and then our target was hit. Looks like, well, I don't even have extended hours on here. And now we're going to lose that spot. And my settings got changed. Just going to fix this real quick. Where is that setting? Pengamak, welcome. Thanks for hopping in. Going over backtesting, some strategy. These bands are currently available only to my Discord, but feel free to jump into the Discord if you want. Link should be in the description here. If anyone knows where the color changes for the extended hours, feel free to let me know. I am not seeing it. And if anyone has any questions as I'm going, it can be related to the backtesting or not related at all. Feel free to shoot any questions. Happy to answer anything. Just kind of hanging out backtesting here. I can't find the color change, so I'm going to just go with it. All right. That other one is gone, so we'll just find the next best time that this strategy happens. So here we're kind of hitting in extended hours. So before the market's open, we're getting a good signal. Again, we're looking for it to come to the top green band here and kind of touch it, which gets marked off with this X right here. And once we hit that, looking for the next pullback to these kind of green pastel bands inside of here. So just keep scrolling sideways. and just looking for it. And this actually would have been a pretty good signal, I think. So once you see this candle, again, it's kind of like a hammer type candle. Volume's pretty good. Definitely a bounce off of these bands and a close above. Could have been looking for an entry on the open of this next candle. Once again, the risk to reward on this one is not too great. If it kind of like touches up and then comes back down pretty quick, you're not going to see a huge gap between here. So you might not get the best risk to reward depending on where this candle closes like this. I'd have my stop loss below these green bands, so it would have been something like this on the first candle. Target is at the top dark green band up here. So again, small risk to reward, not the best setup here, but we're gonna get a better risk to reward as more candles close because we're targeting higher, but this one's also coming upwards, so our stop's moving up. So at the candle we're currently at now, our risk to reward's kind of dynamically moving more to like 1.5, which is pretty good. And of course this one would have stopped us out, so would have entered on this candle right here, and then stopped out on the close of this guy right here. So open of this one right there. So in terms of the stock price, about a 40-cent loss on it. We were targeting, maybe hopeful for a $1 or $2 to the upside. So this one would have lost right here. Let's see, moving on. We can look for these on the downside as well. So I don't have these marked with an X yet, still in progress, but once we come to the bottom down here, kind of breaking through this, now we're looking for a rejection off these purple bands. So just moving sideways, and this is actually end of day now, so an entry would have been impossible on this candle right here. So gonna go ahead and skip over that one. Couldn't have possibly traded it. Had this been like, let's say, one candle earlier, this red candle would have been a pretty good sign. It has a lot of volume, but probably just because it's the closing candle of the day. These bands are moving down pretty rapidly and we're still below them, so it could have been a decent entry had there been more time in the day, but you wouldn't have got this confirmation until 10 minutes after market close, so obviously couldn't have taken this trade. And then, had you been in it, we did end up coming back down to target over here, so would have been about a $4 drop, but couldn't have taken that, of course. So just looking for the next one in here. Okay. So we, around lunchtime, we had a $10 fall. Not really sure what happened right there. But let's see. Scrolling sideways, we're looking for the rejection. This candle is kind of close. We almost get to those purple bands and reject off of them. But we don't quite get there. And the close of this candle is also like below where we would want our target to be first anyways. So entering right here, risk reward's terrible. We're already past target and there's stops all the way up here somewhere. So this is definitely not the candle to enter on, even though it is a bit of a rejection. At this point, you could consider just closing this trade and say that you missed it with this, that there wasn't a good entry, and we've already satisfied like coming back to this and bouncing downwards. A slightly riskier would be to try and enter this again on a rejection. So this would have been a first sign to watch the next candle, I would say. This next candle is kind of pushing above, broke above the bands. So yeah, this would have been our hint to just move on to the next chart. And I don't really see any sort of rejection anyways. So then we're back in after hours. So again, no trade here. Got a question. Is 72 cents a good entry point for CTRM next week? Sure, let me put this to the side for a sec. Take a look at CTRM. Are you like looking for an options trade or like a long-term entry into it? I've never heard of this stock. Interesting. Looks like it IPO'd recently. Over on the weekly, so back in February 2019. Thought this was the daily. Short or midterm? Yeah, it's interesting. It's been downtrending for like over a year and a half, and then out of nowhere we're just getting volume. I don't know what they do. Do they like release something, a product, or partner with someone or something like that? Because starting in 2021, the volume has been abnormally higher than ever before. But just taking a look, let's see, 72 cents. So we've ran from about 15 to like 90 cents here. Ocean transportation, gotcha. 15 to 90 cents through 2021 here. This candle's pretty rough. It ranges from 90 to 50. This is like a 50% pullback in one day. So honestly, like buying this dip probably would have been the move. You can see it hits the 50 right there perfectly. And then my custom bands here, it bounces perfectly off of this green line right here. Just according to the strategy I'm actually showing right now, I'd probably wait for another pullback. Granted, this daily candle looks really good. Volume's picking up. It would be ideal if we did come back and kind of meet these middle green bands right here. Take the fib off. So if we saw some candles that came down and met us at these bands right here, and we started to bounce off of it, that's the strategy I'm showing, and probably where I would recommend. It's hard to take an entry up here near all-time highs, unless there's something super bullish about the company or what they're doing or anything like that. We did break above 74 cents right here pretty strongly, so not impossible that we start to push up and push to new all-time highs. But I guess the main thing I would say is if you're taking a long entry, let's say we do get that pullback like you're asking, 72 cents, where are you going to put your stop loss? Is it just below these few candles into here? Let's zoom a little bit into that. It's a pretty nice uptrend, and this breakout looks pretty decent on high volume. A little bit of a rejection there, but where are you going to put your stop loss? If it's below, these bottoms in here, then you're taking a 17% stop loss. So if that fits your risk management, you could definitely do that and start targeting back at all-time highs. Not the best risk reward on that trade though, 1.34. If we get back to those highs of 90 cents, maybe we keep running past $1. I'd imagine that at $1, there'd be some sort of resistance, but yeah, I would always keep in mind where you think your stop loss is going to be and how much and where your target is for the trade, especially if it's a short or midterm trade like that. But yeah, if you're bullish, a pullback would be awesome. One other thing you could try to look for is, this 74-cent range was clearly resistance like through here, and we're struggling at it now. If we do get something like we break above it like this, we could end up retesting it, and this would be the perfect spot to buy before it continues upwards further. Back to looking for some back testing with this strategy. You can see this candle actually touched our top bands up there. Got a question. What are the bands based on? Bollinger Bands. I'm not sure what KC is. Fib. The bands are Fibonacci based standard deviations of volume weighted moving averages. So they're essentially all volume weighted moving averages, and combined with standard deviations, which are multiplied by some of my favorite Fibonacci values, and then added or subtracted from those main bands. Yeah, no problem. Buy ABC pattern. Yeah, an ABC pullback on that stock would be ideal to buy for sure. So let's see, backtesting still, just looking for anything with the bands here. Yeah, so it's basically they're volume weighted moving averages over some time frame, and then I am taking those. I'm also taking standard deviations over some other time frame, and I'm multiplying the standard deviations by Fibonacci values. And then I'm adding those to the volume weighted moving averages. So it's relatively straightforward. I believe it's pretty simple to what Bollinger Bands actually are. I think those are SMAs with standard deviations. Not sure what type of standard deviations they're using, but mine are Fibonacci-based standard deviations, and I find volume weighted moving average to be better than simple moving averages, so yeah, no problem. The strategy I'm backtesting, for anyone asking on YouTube, is I'm looking for price to touch my top bands here. So either this top green one or this bottom orange one. Once we do that, it gives the first entry sort of hint. And then once we're up there, I'm looking for a pullback and a bounce off of the first set of mid bands, essentially. So on the upside here, when we bounce off the top here, I'm looking for a rejection off of these green pastel bands. So you can see this one, we did get that first tap at the top, but then there's no real rejection off of the green one, so no trade to take here. We just move forward. Bollinger Band uses basic standard deviation on 20 SMA. Gotcha. Oh, Keltner channels. Yeah. Just haven't seen it abbreviated as KC, but yeah. I've never used Keltner channels myself, but have definitely heard of them. Can you take a look at JAGX? Yeah, just a minute on that. I just see this trade. This is after hours, so this is something I'm trying to figure out right now with this strategy is do I listen to the after hours signals? So this is a good test here. After hours, we have a strong push downwards on Alibaba here below my bands. So like I said, I'm looking for rejection off of the purple ones now. And if we can bounce and hold there, I'd be looking for more downside. Essentially, the theory behind it is that we have strong momentum downwards. Once we're cooling off a bit, we'll end up coming back to these middle bands. And then we can play the downside with it. So I'm looking for a rejection. This candle is obviously not a rejection, so I'd wait for another one. This candle is a pretty good rejection. At this point, you could definitely enter a trade, and I think a trade would actually be pretty good. So I would take a short position here at the close of this candle, technically the open of the next, but I don't want to look at it just yet. My stop loss above these purple bands here, so just like that. And then first target is back down at these orange bottom lines right here. So it would just look something like this. Can't quite see the risk reward, but you can see it's pretty good. And I know that as we're trending downwards, these bands are going to follow downwards, and so are these. So the target's actually going to move further and increase our risk to reward. And the stop loss is going to move with us as well and help out. So just watch each of these candles. You can see now on this one, our target's even a little bit further down, like right here. Stop loss gets shrunken a little bit. So you can see what I mean. Ideally, we just keep riding these down and eventually get back to the bottom set of bands. And we'll keep moving. At this point, our stop loss is getting pretty tight there. So we entered right here, and we're looking. This wick could have faked you out. I'd be looking for a close above these purple bands, so it would still be holding for now. Still holding. And then at this point, our stop loss is actually more than break even because we're on this candle. Still trying to target down here. We've already gotten, so let's see, if we entered at the close of this candle, we got a total push of about 2.5 points. So not bad so far. It's end of day, so personally I probably would have closed this trade, because who knows, are we going to hit this after hours here and then end up just bouncing and we miss our exit. So that would have been my exit. It would have been a pretty solid trade here, I think. About 3.5 hours, 17-minute candles here, 2.5 points to the downside, so not bad. And then, yeah, you can see, had we held it, it would have been a pretty bad swing overnight. So before we move on, let's answer some questions. Take a look at JAGX. They got FDA approval for a drug used in COVID vaccines. Sure. So this one on the daily chart here is actually kind of perfect for what I'm showing. We actually rode this upper band. We had a ton of momentum through beginning of January here, obviously running from 78 cents to like $4.50. And like I said, strong momentum. We're looking for a pullback back to these middle bands. Definitely could have entered on this closing candle right here. So could have taken an entry here. You would have been targeting this green upper band. So you would have got your 23% like the same day. Risk to reward was not great on that, so I probably would have taken a lighter position if I took one. But it would have been successful. You would have got about 24%. From here, looking for the next best entry, I'd probably do a fib pull again. It looks like it's a pretty nice retracement, so let's see how that looks. And yeah, you can see, let's get these best on as we can. You can see we bounced right off of the 50, right at my pastel bands right here, so just helping verify that entry. But at this point, I'd say this kind of looks like an A-B, and we'd maybe be coming down for a C, so yeah, sideways action. We don't have a ton of volume. It's hard to validate that this is like bullish in the short term, but I think if you could get another pullback, even down to where we are here at like 230, you could start scaling into a trade. I would love the trade around like 170 to 180. See if we have like any sort of support and resistance. I mean, this golden line, turn this off for a sec. This line right here was like a slight resistance on this 4-hour candle and then helped support us before we pushed upwards. So yeah, I think right there would be a pretty solid entry on this, especially if you're bullish long term. Just looking at an LA wave count, it kind of looks like this should be our 1, 2, and then this is our 3, 4, 5, because I see 5 waves inside of this 3 here. Pretty clear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, this actually looks like a really solid trade, and the only thing is it's deep for a 4-wave. You know, we typically expect a 4-wave to come to the 50 at the deepest, with at least that's where the probability states between this 38.2 and the 50 here. So is it possible that this ABC is already in? The depth would say yeah. I find it hard to like count it. Maybe you get something like that. Not impossible, and then maybe this is the start of the 1, 2 before the 5-wave on that. Let's turn this degree up a bit. This could be possible. Let's see what the fib looks like on this 1, 2. It's kind of like hanging out in nowhere. If it were holding this golden zone here, this could have been a really good spot to buy. Don't love it floating here, but yeah, I'd say this is my ideal spot to buy, around 185, but it's not impossible that this is the 1, 2, and now we're gonna start heading upwards. So if you see something that happens where we get like a nice spike up here in the very short term, and then we get a small pullback, this could be like a secondary spot for you to buy. Because I think if we break upwards a good amount, then this probably is 1, 2, and then we're starting, you know, a 1, 2 on a smaller degree towards this 3 up here somewhere. I think if fib retracement and fib extension you get or placed correctly, then everything will be cool. I'm not too sure which chart you're talking about, Sahil. Yeah, I think this 185 would be a really good spot to enter. The only thing I dislike is how deep it would be for a four-way. You know, it's a golden zone, which four-ways can come that deep. It's just not that common. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. And then I think that would easily be targeting upwards at this green line, like 550-ish if we could. It's a pretty strong push in a deep four, so maybe we don't quite make it up there, but I think we'd at least make it to back to the highs if you could buy at 180. And then, of course, you know, the alternative, it's possible this is our ABC, and then this company just dies off from here. I know nothing about them, but if they got FDA approval for a drug, you know, they're probably not going to bankrupt as a company, and this probably isn't the ABC headed towards zero, but yeah. If you get in at 180, I think you could, you know, I think you could enter at the top of this golden zone here at like 192 technically, and then I'd probably have have a tight stop loss here, like maybe around there, like 170-ish. So if we break through this golden zone, then the odds of it being a 4 are practically 0 at that point. You know, it might happen like less than 10%, but that's where I would stop out. And then, you know, the risk to rewards like absurd if you can take a trade like this. So cool. Let's look for more entries with my backtesting strategy here. Just looking for it to come to the top or bottom band. This one's really close, but I like when we actually hit it, so this is kind of like a fake out to me. I would hold off on that. Okay, here we go. Into here, strong momentum to the bottom band, looking for an entry at the purples again. And we don't get it throughout the whole day. Let's just see how after hours goes out of curiosity. Yeah, we have no volume, so we're just gapping past the support and resistance here. And then of course on open, we're not taking any sort of trade, so not much there to work with. Here we get a bit of a pre-market signal. So we do hit the top band there in pre-market and then come back down. We don't perfectly tap these green bands, but I think this would be enough, you know, we're within like 2 pennies of it. So you could enter a trade on the next candle here. The only problem is if you enter right here, your profit target's so crazy close there that the risk reward's pretty terrible. So yeah, that's a tough one, even though we do head upwards. And then the uptrend kind of continues for a bit. So, you know, you could have pulled 1%, 1.8 points out of that, but not something I would enter there. Just going to switch it up, move to like a daily chart here and see how those signals go. Might be hard to find one. Here we go. That was a close one, but not quite. Of course, it would have been a pretty good entry along this band here to ride back to the top, but okay, yeah, as expected, we're not really going to get much on the daily. Yeah, it's like 2 years of data. Let's try a different chart just to see, like Amazon. Okay, so we have a couple on Amazon. So Amazon, strong opening candle here. Looks like it's post-earnings, so not surprising. Capped up 100 points. Strong momentum, looking for our first pullback. We don't quite tap that band here, so I don't love it. Here we go. Now we're getting on the band here. This is a decent rejection candle on the daily. You could definitely enter a trade here, especially because the upside's so strong. So maybe at the open of this next candle, you target all the way up here. Your stop loss is below here somewhere. What are you getting on the? You're getting like 1.7 on the risk reward, so that's not bad. And like I always say, the reward's moving upwards as time goes, and the stop loss is moving up. So this is really going to improve over time. And then this actually hits our first target, but at this point our target's up here now. And finally, we actually come to target on the daily chart here. What's going on with my... all the way up here. So let's see. We entered on the start of this candle around 1178, and the bands wrote us 150 points on the daily, and this was over about a month. So if you're trading options, maybe a monthly at 1180, you could have taken a monthly for like 1300 or so, and then would have nailed the target about a month later there. Not even close to threatening the stop loss. Max drawdown was like, I don't know, 15 points in there. So yeah, that's pretty solid. That worked well on the daily for Amazon there. See if we can find another one. Sahil, you said 786 should be a stop loss. Yeah, that could definitely be a good stop loss. I don't like using the 786 if I'm thinking it's a 4-wave, because the odds of a 4-wave getting as deep as the 786 are like, I don't know the percent, but it's extremely low. So okay, we actually just barely missing it on here. This is something that I might consider if we get a strong bounce off of the mid bands, because we only missed this by like $1 here on the daily chart from touching our band right there. So maybe I'd say it's a questionable entry, but let's take a look at what would have happened. So this is obviously not a rejection candle. This is a bit of a rejection, and then this one is good as well. So definitely could have opened. This also gapped down the next day, so we closed here and we gapped down 25 points. So even on the opening of that candle, you could have got a decent signal to take a short from right here. Stop loss above our purple bands on the short side here. Target first right here. So risk to reward's pretty good. I actually got there on the next candle here. So you got about a 95-point move if you played this one right here in just one day. Presumably, since it's the daily chart, probably would have been taking monthlies or so. So would have got target very quick, and you could even have rode through this downtrend another 200 points or so to the bottom of that, to the next band down here. So far the daily chart Amazon trades are pretty good, 2 for 2, and neither even close to stop loss. Both were really strong hits, especially if it's a monthly and you had like a 1600 on the monthly and you got there the next day. That would have been a really nice setup. So we get another one in here. Looks like we had a candle Christmas 2019 just after it, bump us up 150 points, and then looking for our rejection. Maybe this would have faked you out. I probably would have waited for the next candle, at least to see where it opened, but you could have technically taken a trade on that. I don't love this as a reversal candle though, but let's say you did. Even the risk to reward on that's not great. You're getting about 1.2. You would have just barely stopped out before the huge long gap upwards. So unfortunately, this candle would have stopped you out had you been in that before the 200-point gap upwards, and this is before earnings as well. So, and then we get actually just the next day here, we have another signal on the bullish side. Again, looking for a reversal. This would have been a pretty good signal again. Maybe a good enough one to enter. Maybe you wait for the next candle. Had you waited, you would have seen that we gapped up on open here, so probably would have been hard to not take a trade right there. And of course, you would have stopped out of it. So yeah, it's the tough one. Is this a good enough reversal candle with a gap open the next day? Probably. Another signal up here. Let's look for a reversal. This one's pretty far out here. You know, at this point, probably would have just closed this chart and not looked for it. But had you actually taken it, maybe off of this candle right here, it's low volume, but a hammer candle, you obviously would have got a good trade out of that. Try switching to an hourly chart and maybe go over to like Google or something. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to shoot them my way. For anyone on YouTube, just doing some back testing of an indicator I built out and a strategy that I'm working on creating. So we're going to look for the first entry signal here. Okay, so here's one right here. It's in after hours. Let's see if we could have entered this trade. When we opened through the day, we kind of just rode this top band here. Didn't really see an entry at all, so nothing there. And then the next day, we're actually potentially getting some sort of signal in here. So we're hovering on the band right now, not really seeing a reversal candle. Of course, now we get the reversal candle, but it's the closing candle of the day. So you wouldn't have been able to enter right there, unfortunately. So not much to work with there. And yeah, we're not really getting a ton of entries on these longer term time frames because you know, there's just not enough candles. So I'm gonna drop back to the 17. What do I think of SPY puts into next week? Yeah, let's take a look. I've actually been kind of wrongly predicting the top of SPY for quite a bit now. There's a few times where I definitely thought we were peaking. I think in here I actually thought it was going to be the peak. We did get a nice pullback, but continued upwards, and then just a few days ago or a few weeks ago, I thought that we were going to have a peak somewhere close to here, and again, we got like a small pullback here and then a decently sized pullback right there, but SPY keeps trucking upwards here, so it's definitely proving me wrong on the upside. I got this channel on it that I like, and I still think we're looking for this fifth wave in here. It's hard to count this action as any sort of, you know, bullish wave because there's just no momentum to it. So it's definitely tough to know where this fifth wave is going to fall. And as I'm looking at this now, I'm kind of realizing this 1-2 is like really small, which I think I said in my last analysis for it. For the length is 3 and then this length is 5. So I feel like something like this is probably better. Where this is actually our 1-2 and then maybe we're just in a third wave. I really don't like this as a third wave because it should be impulsive. But if this is our third, we can't really fit our fourth anywhere. If it goes here, it still overlaps this 1, which means it's not valid unless we're in a diag. And the third wave is shorter than the first wave right there. And now the fifth wave is actually longer than the fourth wave, so that would mean our third wave is the shortest here, so that's not possible. We could have... Not sure why it's moving like that. We could have our 1 right there, our 2 here, and maybe we have a 1, 2, 3. Let's see, we can't have a 4 wave here, so the third would have to be here. I'm sure the third's longer than it is now. Yeah. And then we have some sort of like running flat 4 wave, which I also really don't like, but let's get rid of these lines. So if this is our 1, 2, 3, 4, the 2 is really shallow, pretty low probability. The 4 is pretty decent, and this fib pole is pretty good. We come to this green line perfectly right here. Okay, so if we run with this as our 1, 2, 3, 4 so far, let's throw a channel on it. Or sorry, we want the channel from the 2 to the 4 to the 3 here. This median line's doing pretty well throughout this price action. It's catching all this really nicely. If we just pull this down to the 1 to see what that would look like instead. Yeah, no, it definitely it fits nicely on the top of it, but yeah, it definitely fits on the 3 better. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate this count right here. If we're in some sort of again, the 2 is really ugly. Everything else is not bad. The 3 would be kind of short for a third wave, but we did have just this huge panic right before all this, so not that surprising that we're not just raging upwards after a lot of fear in the market. 4 as the running flat, again, also kind of unlikely, so I don't love the count, but it's what I can find that fits right now, and this fifth wave is just not a fifth wave. I mean, I don't know how you would possibly count 5 waves into this, but this is the best that I got. I wouldn't be looking for puts yet. I wouldn't be looking for calls yet either, because there's just no conviction which way SPY is going to go. I guess we broke all-time highs, and if we zoom in a little bit, draw where those could be into here, like 385-ish. You know, maybe if we come down in the short term and bounce off 35, you could take some calls. But I'm not really seeing how you would take puts at this point, other than maybe the volume is decreasing. It's a little bit of a bearish sign through this whole push. I guess the daily candle is like kind of a reversal candle, but the volume is pretty low relative to like some of these other peaks in here, so I don't love that. I think I'd prefer we pull back just a little bit, rebounds 385, come up towards like the top of my band where it'll meet us up here, maybe like $400 on SPY as a fifth wave in here, and we'll get huge psychological resistance at 400 too. So I think if we could get something like that, then you could look for puts to the downside, and we'd break out of this channel, of course, and then probably head downwards to like somewhere in this range. Bottom of this 4 would be nice, so like 322, shallow for a 2 wave, but this 2 wave was shallow, so not that crazy. And there's a lot of support here around 337 to 320. Gonna draw a box. More likely for a 2 wave is that we actually come down to this 50 here, like 310 or even lower, but I just don't think it's gonna happen. And this 1-2 is kind of like our first sign of of that our two waves just aren't going to be deep right now. It's just too much pushing the market up. So yeah, I think 400 will be an interesting level if we can get there. Maybe we'll cut it a couple dollars short, like 397, and then it'll be front run as a nice push downwards. Maybe sometime over the next month or so this happens, and then we start to head downwards for this bigger correction before the market can really continue upwards from here. Let's see if we can find an entry on Google on the 17-minute chart here. Not a whole lot on Google here. Here we go. It's our first entry signal we're seeing with the bands, so pushing this top band, we'll look for a pullback and bounce off of the middle ones. Day kind of ends in here, so unfortunately we get this pullback and perfect bounce off right inside of here, but obviously we can't enter anything. And it takes us bullish into the next day, so couldn't have found an entry there. Here's a signal to the bearish side, so we're pushing the bottom bands here. Let's look for a rejection off the purples now. And once again, the day ends. So, you know, it's hard to say if we would have got it or not. Obviously, we couldn't have entered him. We had no volume through here, so not going to find anything. Almost had a signal here at the end of the day before earnings. Not quite, though. So yeah, really not much on a 17-minute chart either. Definitely a lot harder to find the entries on the longer term candles with this through stocks, just because of the market close. Be curious to test it with like... Yeah, definitely. So basically the bands are volume weighted moving averages, and they're fib based standard deviations of them essentially. The strategy we're testing is when we start to push towards the top bands, so this top green band, once we get to it or above it, this X is going to print on my chart. It's like the first sign to like look for an entry essentially, and you can do the same thing on the downside. If we hit this bottom orange band, we'd be looking for an entry to short it. Essentially, the theory behind it is that once we get to these bands, the momentum is so strong to be able to push all the way up to the top one that we want to kind of wait for it to calm out a little bit and then join an entry to the upside with it. So right here we're looking at a signal where we get to the top up here, and now I'd be looking for a bounce and hold of these first set of green bands inside of here. So if I just scroll sideways, I'd say this is the candle that would have confirmed me. This is kind of like a green hammer-ish candle, and the volume is good. It's like the best volume we've had over the past like 10 candles in here. So at this point, I'd be looking at a long entry right at the opening of this candle, and my first target will be up back at this green band right here, this dark green one. So we'll set it like that. My stop loss will be below these pastel green bands in here, so something like that. So don't want to scroll to spoil it, but the risk reward kind of looks about 1 to 1 right now. The good thing is, as we move in time, these pastel bands will move upwards, and so will these. So my target kind of goes upwards. My stop loss follows as like a trailing stop loss also, so risk reward improves over time. And then we'll kind of just ride this out. So you can see even where we are now, stop loss moves a little bit up to like right here-ish, and then target goes a little bit up as well. So now our risk reward's improving. And it just continues to do that. I won't keep pulling it on every candle, but we do end up stopping out on this one. So we entered on the opening candle right here. We stopped out on a break and closed below, so right here. So we would have lost about, what is that, like $240, 0.7% on this, or sorry, it's a little bit more. Almost $300, less than 1% loss. Whereas when we were at this candle, we were targeting about 1.5% to the upside at this point. So losing trade, risk reward, not terrible. We did get a bounce, and we did push like $325 upwards. So, but not quite to target on this one. And then it kind of looks like we got a little bit of the fake out on this one, so just barely stopped us out. And these are also just barely below this line here. But then eventually we got up to green bands once again to put in new highs. Let's take a look for the next trade in here. Need to go further back in time. Curious to try this on the daily chart for Bitcoin and see what kind of signals we get generated. Yeah, feel free to ask any other questions as well. So on the downside here with Bitcoin, we are pushing down. Here we'd be looking for joining into the bearishness of this. So we'd be looking for a bounce off these purples. And let's see. This is obviously not a reversal candle, neither is this one. This one could be giving us a sign of a reversal. I'd like to close below the purples, but instead we just get above, so no entry there. Move on to the next one. Oh, get a signal here. Let's look for our next bounce. And unfortunately, we just missed an entry here. Just was too bullish, didn't come down that extra couple dollars for us before the huge pump. Let's look for anything else. On the bearish side here, we get this signal. You could have entered on this rejection candle right here. So we don't quite hit the purple bands, and I'd definitely like to actually hit them. So it would have been a bit of a greedy entry here on the close here, but you could have targeted down here, stop up here with a short position. The risk reward's pretty bad on that though. So you got only like 0.5 to 1, so we did get a nice push downwards. Ended up pulling down about $1,000 from a short entry right here, 8,300 to 7,300, which is like 12%. So not quite to target, but maybe you took some profit because you were deep in the green at that point. Get another short entry signal here. This is a decent rejection, but once again, the risk to reward is going to be really bad because we've already pulled back so far. So if you're entering here, your target's only right there with a stop up here. So you're kind of getting like a 0.5 risk to reward again. And then eventually you'd get stopped out like right in here on this candle close or this candle close. So would have taken a 10% loss. Let's take a look at something else. Let's maybe look at SPY, like a 17-minute. Anyone else have any other questions, like related to the bands or just trading in general? Trading questions you're curious about? Anything like that? Any charts you want me to take a quick look at? Leaks on companies that are going to recover after vaccine, like cruise lines. Yeah, I mean, I don't personally trade on any fundamentals like that. I find it too difficult to kind of predict what's going to happen fundamentally with companies, and I'd rather just look at the charts. So personally, I wouldn't use the fact that, hopefully at some point our cruise lines are going to recover and the companies will come back alive, because there's too many other factors. How long will it be? How much will they recover? Which ones will actually recover? Will some buy out other ones that are too deep in debt or just don't have enough money to keep running? You know, too many factors that I have no idea on. So I'd rather look at the charts. But if you want me to check the chart of any of them, I could give a technical analysis opinion on any of them. SPY, we got a signal up here. We didn't really get any sort of confirmation rejection off of it. I mean, maybe you kind of like took a greedy entry on this and around 360 and you could have stopped out at like 359.79 for like a very, very small loss in here, but not much there. We get a bullish signal through here, kind of miss the bands and then bounce. So again, I'd be a little worried when this happens, that we just barely missed it. I'm getting a YouTube error. Can the people on YouTube still see my screen? With this right here, I think this would have been a really good candle. This is like a very perfect hammer candle where we touched the second band and closed above the top. So this would have been the perfect spot to take an entry. The start right here. We'd have our stop loss below here, target up here. Risk reward's really good on this trade. Only thing is, going into close, especially when you get such a nice pump like this, I might have closed off this trade and you would have got like 2 points to the upside. Yeah, that'd be me personally, because who knows if like after hours we get to target and then can't sell and then we end up down here, you know. So I probably would have closed right here, and then yeah, scrolling upwards, that's kind of exactly what happened. We didn't get to target, but we did fall afterwards. So yeah, we can take a look at Royal Caribbean. You're curious about leaps on it. Just clean my chart for a sec. So I like to draw some support and resistance on clean charts like this. That's a very clear one throughout the whole chart. We got something like up in here somewhere. And then up here somewhere. And then we got this low in here, but not really seeing it as a great spot. Maybe in here. Anyways, Royal Caribbean on leaps. So we're getting a nice push upwards of price for sure in some sort of like ascending triangle like that. What I don't like is that volume is doing the opposite completely. So just really weak on volume on this push upwards. This fib pull doesn't really look like it's playing around with that too much. See if we can pull anything better. Yeah, I'm not really loving the fib on this right now. It's not really rejecting any of these levels, which could mean that there's not a ton of algos trading this right now, which would support the volume as well. You know, there's not a lot to love about this chart, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if we come out of this triangle and break downwards at some point up here, like in March or April. And maybe at that point, if we were to, get this nice pullback, then you could buy a company like this. And find it hard to buy right here unless, you want to take a long, like below this 63-ish dollar support that's on our chart here. You could potentially take something like this with like a 14% stop and maybe target back to the highs. I just don't love it. I don't think there's a lot to support this trade. I can't really find much technically good about it, unless we can find like a good pitchfork. But I doubt it. I can't really see one. Here we go. Maybe this pitchfork's coming on to something. Let's get these on the pivots better. It's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, this pitchfork's pretty solid resistance there. So maybe if we come back down to this median line of here, then you could have some sort of confidence towards taking a trade. I think that's similar to the level I was just pointing out as well. I shouldn't have deleted it, but yeah, I believe it was right there. So actually that's perfect. End of April, if we're around $56, I think you could definitely take a longer term trade on Royal Caribbean here and maybe target either at least back to this median line for a nice pop, or potentially at some point in the far future some highs up there. Not quite at our 50 here, but not bad. Maybe something like this would be good. That's multiple years out. Something like this, or up here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see a reason to buy in here with it. But if we come back down to $55, especially if it lines up perfectly inside of this little confluence zone right here, then I think you have something you can work off of. Anyways, gonna go ahead and end the stream here, everyone. Thanks for hopping in. If you have any last minute questions, stay around for 2 or 3 more minutes. You want me to check out anything real quick, or got any day trading questions, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, expert, anything. If you want to check out the bands that I use and that I've developed, they're available for anyone in my Discord. Should be a link in the description of this or in the description of any of my more recent videos. You can come check it out. We've got like a couple hundred people in there trading options for the most part. Also look at stocks and crypto a bit. We're live trading with each other every single day. Great community. Lots of people calling out great trades. A few mentors making good ideas, including myself. Yeah, feel free to come check it out. If not, and there's no other questions, hopefully this helped you guys a little bit. And got a video coming out for you guys shortly tomorrow. All right, guys. Take care. Thanks for stopping in.